So let others to join in. And good afternoon, good evening to all those who are present here for today's National CSR Conference. Today we are going to take on a very new format and very new, of course, law which is going to come up in coming days. That is social stock exchange, and I'm sure this will change the complete landscape of social development sector. So we have a very eminent speaker who will be discussing about, who will be guiding us about how exactly this social stock exchange is and what exactly government is looking out with the means of social stock exchange, how it is there and why it is there, and how we can be them as an social development professionals, as in CSR professionals, and others, those who are working on the social development sectors, how they can get benefit out of that. So first, let me introduce our today's speaker. Our today's speaker is Advocate S. Ramarao. He has been associated with me and my initiative of Atma Bharatam vocational since beginning, and he's also a co-course mate of mine, CSR professional. He is advocate in advisory and certified CSR professional from ICSI. He is also Arthik panel member of National Stock Exchange Goa Service Chapter, and he is a faculty and career counselor at ICSI Goa chapter. He is also a faculty at ICMR Goa campus and also a certified independent director. Apart from this, he is also associated in the previous, he was associated with CCF, WHO projects, and also a researcher in one of the district level project too. And he will join us today's talk, that is a social stock exchange. And I am very much delighted to actually welcome him here on the board. Floor is yours, sir. Keep on rocking for the new law and of course the new domain, which is social stock exchange. So over to you.
Yes. Good evening, sir. Thank you very much. I hope you can hear me, sir, clearly.
I can very well.
Yeah, I can. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So good evening to all of you. Quite a large participation, around 18 people. Nice crowd. Today's topic is really very interesting. In fact, the more I read, the more I feel there is scope, huge ocean of opportunity. Could be galaxy of problems also, and a lot of gray areas are there. Lot of gray areas are there. Okay, let us go through as much as possible to the finer details. At the fag end, rather, I would say we will discuss rather than clarification of doubts, because this is an opportunity to be explored. So invariably, all your personal experiences, inputs will add more value to this opportunity rather than creating a mess out of, generally when we say stock exchanges, the negative part of it is very open to unpredictable type of environment. But see, as my personal experience being very closely associated with National Stock Exchange in the redressal committee, wherein we hear plenty of cases, I doubt social stock exchange will have such a big problem. So to begin with, I have made some PPTs which could be quite informative also, and I will share you the source of the document wherein I have inferred. So long before the social stock exchange came up as a concept, as a proposal by our beloved finance minister, Madam Nirmala Sitharaman, it was really fascinating and very inspiring. It was suddenly something that is going to open up. So I will open my presentation so that as much as possible, once we go through the recommendations and all that is going to be implemented, what I would say is then we will deliberate on the issues. Okay. So shall I open my presentation, sir? Is it
yes,
just
please,
confirm
yes,
whether you can please confirm whether you can see. And I will do one thing. I'll off my video because the bandwidth will be much available for me.
Okay.
Yes. I'm not able to off my video. Anyway, I will just open up the presentation. Sir, is my screen visible, sir?
Let me see. Wait a while.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, it is visible to me. Let us see how others are looking for
Yeah,
it.
yeah. I request others to confirm because I have changed the screen.
Yeah, it is visible to me.
So it should be visible to others also.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Sir, yeah, I'll just expand the document. Yeah, now it's visible, I suppose. Right. So I have sourced, in fact, this presentation of mine, the derivative is the recommendations forwarded for the said purpose, creation of a stock exchange, rather establishment of a stock exchange and the law by itself. Okay. So at the outset, first thing it is always thrilling to associate with Mr. Pradeep Singh, the way he innovates and brings us to a common platform to exchange views and sharpen our skills also. So Pradeep sir and Arpita madam, I am very, very grateful to you for always keeping me on your mailing list. And another great advantage of this great sessions are, we come to know extraordinary, wonderful people whom we in the normal circumstance would not have met at all. So I am always enthusiastic, whenever you conduct any program, I'll jump in to see that I am available for the session to hear it or to participate in it. So thank you once more, sir. And now I come into the part of social stock exchange. Some of the practical aspects of social stock exchange in India. What I would highlight some points, so that we can deliberate. It is a simple presentation, not very complicated. And again, I would tell you, I have derived this from the 72-page draft recommendations sent for lawful implementation. So it's almost like a law that is going to come up. So the social stock exchange would give non-profit organizations and FPE. What is FPE? Anybody can guess? With social objective, access to donors and confidence to donors on the impact of their donations and contributions. So it is a stock exchange for the purpose of social activities. We'll go into the further details. The working group on SSE, that is Social Stock Exchange, was constituted on 19 September 2019 to recommend a broad framework. Fine. Listing of NPOs, that is non-profit organization, FPEs, for profit social enterprises. Basically, all these legal entities catering to the needs of social sector. Okay, basically, the predominantly four legal entities are NGOs, trusts, societies, and Section 8 invariably. Okay. The prescription of disclosure requirements, that is financial, governance, operational, performance, and social impact. Then scope of work, eligibility criteria, and regulation of social auditors. Then listed social legal entity has the following what you call privileges: the instruments for raising of funds, then eligibility norms for participation in fundraising through SSE, disclosures, listing and trade, oversight, etc. Okay. Then listing framework. Okay. The listing framework would be like this: eligibility criteria for NPOs and FPEs, collectively referred as entities. The entities should be able to demonstrate that social intent and impact are its primary goals. Of late, till date, whatever has been discussed, right from day one till date, whatever has been discussed, all that are the ingredients for the NPO to project what it intends to do, why it wants to seek the fund, and so on and so forth. So focus on eligible social objectives for undeserved or less privileged population or regions. These are the areas where you would be seeking funds. What you call filters to establish the primacy of social impact objective of social enterprise. So activities based filters, then based on recipient of activities, then NPO FPE to contribute a certain percentage of its activities towards eligible activities to the target population. So these are all those areas where we follow legally. For example, activities based on filters. So the first filter is Schedule 7 of the Companies Act, which insists of the areas where the CSR activities should go ahead. And of course, what you call Section 135 of the Companies Act tells the what you call bearing rule to come under CSR. Okay, then entities not to be considered as NPOs and FPs, corporate foundations, political or religious organizations, activities, professional or trade associations, infrastructure and housing companies except affordable housing. This is something which is coming up. We can deliberate in the later stage after my presentation. Will not be permitted on SSC. Then another factor is NPO registration with SSC. Registration of NPO with SSC will provide confidence to the investor community, the characteristics of having the social stock exchange. Then mandatory qualifying criteria for registration prescribed in detail, such as NPO to be a legally registered NPO. As I already mentioned, all the preliminary requirements for the establishment or incorporation of non-profit organizations, legal entities, has to be perfect to its kind, and further such validity of registration and other things, in simple words, the whole set of compliances is required so that you properly get listed with the social stock exchange. Fine. Then nature of the listed securities have been recommended. Basically, a stock exchange is a premises wherein the legal entity seeks funds from the interested public or organizations. So it is an issue, it is an offer that is explicitly put forward to seek funds in the format of an instrument. So basically, for not-for-profit companies registered under Section 8 of the Companies Act, equity can be listed. Okay. For others, NPOs, zero coupon, zero principal bonds are issued. Then social venture funds raised by alternative investment funds, category 1, on behalf of NPOs. Then development impact bonds. NPOs can receive grants through existing mutual funds through AMCs. Then what you call example of existing fund is Hdfc Cancer Fund. Fine. Then for FPEs, equity and debt instruments as already existing in the SEBI regulations, social impact funds. So these are the ways where the funds can be raised by of course extending an offer document. I would say the word which I not mentioned here is prospectus, wherein all the details are mentioned, and hence the entities, based on their legal incorporation, the fundraising procedure would change. See, the social venture funds are proposed to be renamed as social impact funds. Then illustrations have been provided as to the working of the aforesaid instruments on SSC. Outline of the offer documents for listing of the aforesaid instruments is prescribed in the report. Fine. So we will delve on this based on some illustrative examples and realistic examples on how funds can be raised. Okay, by the size of the project, depending on the duration also. Okay, listing guidelines of NPOs and FPEs. NPOs to provide audited financial statements of previous 3 years and social impact statements. Then as part of offer documents, NPOs to provide details under the head call differentiators such as vision, target, segment, strategy, governance, management, operations, finance, compliance, credibility, social impact, risks, etc. So I would say the most important document that is put forth by a legal entity to seek funds by offering various through various instruments would be a prospectus, and the content of the prospectus would be all this what I said to you. The differentiators, the mention of the differentiators and the details. So it is the vision statement, target, segment, strategy, governance, management, operations, finance, compliance, credibility, social impact, risks. You know, I would say it is an agile methodology, but predominantly these following parameters are mentioned in the offer document, for which the interested individuals or institutions would put forth their amount. Okay. Then FPs, existing SEBI regulations on eligibility criteria for listing of securities such as equity, debt issued by FPs. Then additional disclosures to be provided in the offer document under the heads called differentiators as specified above. Okay. Then disclosures and reporting, obviously all the compliances have to be disclosed. So disclosure norm is a predominant factor. And since the whole setup is being supervised, administered, and regulated by SEBI, the SEBI rules and regulations for the normal profit-oriented companies would imply here also. What do you call? We call it listing obligations, disclosure norms are to be adhered to. So it is as good as telling the truth about your company in simple words, instead of putting it very complicated. So the disclosures would be there. There will be general statements like vision, mission, activities, and scale of operations. Then governance would be mentioned. Who are the stakeholders, remuneration policies, compliance, certification, etc. Financial statements like balance sheet, etc. would be put forth. Then the FP listing equity that shall, in addition to social impact reporting requirement, fine. So social impact report is one criteria which holds an important section of the document. Reporting on social impact, both FPs and NPOs, once they have their securities listed, or once the NPO has registered with the exchange but chooses not to list, to produce an annual impact report. Then the annual impact report is to capture the qualitative and quantitative aspects of the social impact generated by the social enterprise. Then relevance of AIF, alternative investment funds, to prepare the report. Then annual impact reporting, strategic intent and planning approach, impact scorecard, detailed guidance on AIR available. Right, enabling ecosystem. So some of the ecosystems are capacity building. So capacity building funds, there is another format where capacity building is part of a social entity. Then supported by administrative type of activities we call social auditors. Then social audit critical to provide confidence to the funders. This is of great importance. In fact, auditing plays a big role. Then social auditors to carry audit of social impact. Then both financial and non-financial auditor can be social auditors. Then eligibility criteria for social audit recommended. Then for what you call responsibility of self-regulated organizations, SRO for social auditors recommended to be assigned to ICAI, and mechanism for constituting the SRO. Okay, that is self-regulated organization. So format of assurance of social impact reporting to be provided by social auditors prescribed. So here, as soon as a social stock exchange regulated by SEBI comes in, then you can invariably realize there is a need for a lot of professionalism. As soon as I mentioned that a legal, what you call a social sector legal entity gets enlisted, right from the day beginning till the project is completed, there is a lot of professionalism. So I'd say social stock exchange is a huge opportunity to be explored. No matter how depth we go and dissect each of the statements, probably every statement is an opportunity. So information repositories, a very important ingredient of social stock exchange. Currently, information repositories function as aggregator of information on NGOs and provide a searchable database in a comparable form. Yes, aggregating data is very, very important. Primarily in social sector, this will avoid duplication of the projects, unnecessary overflow of funds to only a populistic form of social problem. To avoid that, a common repository is must. It is as good as, in simple words, telling a database. Instead of having multiple databases, by virtue of this stock exchange, a real information repository gets created. That's very important. In fact, no regulatory intervention required for IR as of now. Okay, then appropriate regulations will be prescribed as their roles shape in. So this is the format of social stock exchange in a nutshell. Then immediately it is something, what I'm discussing is food for thought. Now I'll go into my next presentation. That will be on. Yes, sir. Sir, you can see this presentation. Hello, sir.
I can see.
Yes, sir. So you can hear also, no, sir. So again, now whatever I said, I put it in, shooting the bullets very straight. That was the critical part, the core area of the necessity, the what you call extensive need of social stock exchange. Then again, I have another presentation highlighting on a different issue pictorially again. Okay. Then social stock exchange basically is based on Sri Ishat Hussain committee recommendation. This is the crux of it. So whenever a committee is created, invariably the stakeholders are plenty of NGOs, trusts, societies in general, and what you call NPOs and FPEs basically. So there is a very important part of it. There are around 300 million non-profit organizations. My God, there is, as an advocate, I see many of them are in a big mess also, but they can be polished. Bad things need not be said. It is permanent by nature. It can also be corrected and streamlined into the proper development for the betterment of the society and large. So this is where the social stock exchange would give NPOs and FPEs with social objective. So the constitution of the working group on SSC, a small brief narration about it. The working group on SSC was constituted on 19 September 2019 to recommend a broad framework. So the framework in 5 parameters like this: instruments for raising funds, as we already discussed, then eligibility norms for participation in fundraising through SSC, then disclosure norms, listing and trading, oversight or overseeing authorities and all. The report by working group was provided on 1st June 2020, and it was even it was open for a lot of inputs from the general public or the stakeholders. It was a very interesting format of presentation. So Union Budget 2019 proposed setting up of the first of its kind SSC in India. Then invariably the attachment would be to 2 big pillars, that is National Stock Exchange and Bombay Stock Exchange. So on the contrary, SSC will be listed on NSE and BSE. Fine, that is the final. So the existence of social stock exchange will not be as an independent entity. It would be attached to the existing 2 predominant stock exchanges in our country, NSE and BSE. Fine. So the registered members or legal entities of SSC will be non-profit organizations, NPOs, social enterprising organizations, NGOs, trust, societies, Section 8 companies. Fine. These are the obvious entities. A big scope. Now, I would say invariably, when you say social stock exchange, bound to create a lot of interest amongst various legal entities. So whoever has never done their what you call prerequisites correctly, I would say the first scope of professionalism required. So all the what you call dormant, inactive legal entities on the social sector, now they have to steam up to explore the very beautiful advantage of SSC. Okay. So as I showed you, the reasons are plenty here, core recommendations and all, will just overlook that. So invariably the need has to be emphasized. Invariably many things will be looked into. The very reason for this, a common platform for somewhat an unorganized format of funding that goes around, lot of duplication happening. And of course, the law has already has come into force through the Companies Act. Okay, CSR is being implemented. Social stock exchange, now it is, we call it backward engineering. We are going to this stout pillar now. Social stock exchange becomes a very strong premises. So what could that be? Social stock exchange, once more to repeat in a more refined words, holistic approach to development of social sector by providing recognition to all legal social entities. Fine. This is the first stage for proper recognition. Benefits to all the registered legal social entities. So absolutely one has to be serious when you would like to participate or make an impact on social sector, rather providing social solutions to social problems. Okay. Now, creation of a minimum corpus fund for meeting social objective in the form of social venture fund. Fine. Proposal of a capacity building fund of rupees 100 crores with the government. Now, the previous document which I discussed with you, now I'm refining it with more inputs. So what is the capacity building fund would be 100 crores. Fine. Private, institutional and public participation invariably. Okay. This reminds me of a very nice methodology, which to some extent is really public-private participation. Okay. Then the most attractive part of all this would be tax incentives. Every one of us would always vie for the tax incentives. Recommendations that the investors to be exempted from paying securities transaction tax, and then LTCG, long-term capital gains on their respective trades and investments. So huge deliberations on this sector. We can have an exclusive session on this by taking some realistic examples with respect to the legal entities, so that it becomes easy for them to manage. Okay, so tax incentives is really attractive proposal. Then proposal of three methods to raise funds to for the social sector legal entities. What are the three ways? Mutual funds, one format; social venture fund, another format; then direct listing on SSC. So what is mutual fund? The social sector can approach mutual fund houses to promote a fund wherein the investors will get back their principal amount, while the interest incurred or the profits earned would fund the social legal entities to meet their social financial needs. So this is very interesting. In fact, very serious professionalism, having a lot of expertise on capital markets and security laws is absolutely required, because the legal entity on the social sector can create a very beautiful instrument which is known as mutual fund. So it can be designed. Okay, one mutual fund which has been very popular is Hdfc Cancer Mutual Fund. So the criteria for this fund would be the principal amount is still retained by the what you call contributor to the fund. So I contribute around say 1 lakh towards the mutual fund, and the purpose could be cancer mutual fund. The interest of my fund goes to the activity, but please remember, I still own the rights of my primary 1 lakh. But I would say there should be a lock-in period. Suddenly I shouldn't get up and say I want to withdraw the fund. That shouldn't happen. There should be a lock-in period of 3 years as stipulated by the law, because any project social sector should be of 3 years tenure. Then it goes for subsequent upgradation and revival, in fact. Then another fund is social venture fund, permitted through SEBI, Securities Exchange Board of India, the regulator. In this procedure, the fund manager will aggregate money from investors and then provide to social legal entities as grants. Invariably, in social sector, all that money that is generated, there is a fine, simpler word which doesn't have a lot of what you call multi-interpretation. Grant is that which is taken, not returned. But the purpose for which it is taken has to be met, and it should not be for the bogus purpose. It should never be abstract by nature. This is something that has to have a culminating effect. Okay, so direct listing, the third format. In this procedure, we call it ZC, ZP, that is zero coupon, zero principal bond. Fine. In this factor, the principal and the interest both are absorbed into the project. So it is known as zero coupon, zero principal bond. Then with respect to tax, again, to highlight a recommendation to allow 100% tax exemption to first-time retail investors for their investment in mutual funds, units of those social legal entities listed on SSC. Exemption on tax limit to rupees 1 lakh. This is to enable unlocking of funds from donors, philanthropic foundations, CSR spenders in the form of bonds listed on SSC. It's a very interesting, in fact, suddenly a huge opportunity that has opened up. Okay, then some more aspects of the recommendations. Recommendation now it is going to be implemented. In fact, okay, non-profit organizations can directly list on SSC through issuance of bonds. Okay, rather get enlisted, then start offering bonds. Okay, a range of funding mechanisms have been recommended, including some of the existing mechanisms such as SVFs, so what you call social venture funds, under the alternative investment funds. Okay, so categorization of funds have been done. A new minimum reporting standard has been proposed to the organization, which would raise funds under SSE. Invariably, reporting is a must. If one who takes money should know, should always tell to the lender, rather the donor here, okay, who doesn't seek it back. If you don't report, then the enthusiasm of the donor fails. Okay, for profit social enterprises, also listing on SSC, enhanced reporting requirements is required. So I'll deliberate on a very typical issue on this. How profit organizations get enlisted for a social motive. To encourage giving culture, some tax incentives have been recommended. Right. Then the SSC will be housed with the existing stock exchange, that is Bombay Bombay Stock Exchange or National Stock Exchange. This will help the SSC leverage the existing infrastructure and client relationship of the exchanges to onboard investors, donors, and social enterprises for profit and non-profit too. The SSC will have two primary roles. So now, to put it definitely, what that SSC has two primary roles is to effectively deploy the fundraising instruments and structures available under the regulatory guidance towards social enterprise. That is one primary role. And the second primary role is to foster overall sector development by creating a capacity building unit which will be responsible for encouragement and other things. So I elaborate very briefly on the first primary role, to effectively deploy the fundraising instruments and structures available under the regulatory guidelines towards social enterprise. What would be that be? For FPs, equity and social venture funds, and for NPOs it is zero coupon, zero principal bonds, then SVFs, mutual funds, various pay for success structures, then other securities and units that may be involved. And for Section 8 companies, equity and debt. So very briefly I have categorized the types of funds for different legal entities. Okay. SPEs, NPOs, and NPOs in general, Section 8 specifically. Okay. Then to foster, the second primary role of social stock exchange would be to foster overall sector development by creating a capacity building unit which will be responsible for encouraging the setting up of self-regulatory organizations that will bring together existing information repositories in the immediate term for extending requisite support to SSC. So invariably, if one comes, the other supporting pillars have to grow, and the two other entities that would definitely fall in place would be self-regulatory organizations, then information repositories. Okay. Then implementing the reporting standard for all social enterprises that benefit from the SSC, then operating the capacity building fund for enhancing reporting capabilities by NPOs, particularly the smaller NPOs. So even the smaller NPOs who are very serious about the social sector activities also have a very great chance to get into social stock exchange. So creating awareness and driving adoption of this fund among NPOs, philanthropists and donors. Fine. Another important criteria would be activity raising awareness and promoting the fundraising instruments, structures, availability on the SSC among social enterprises and non-profit organizations. Okay. Right. In order to benefit from SSC, the availability of fundraising instruments have to be designed invariably. So that is a repetition. Now I'm coming to the same explanatory part, but in a diagrammatic format. So the minimum reporting standard for immediate terms. So some characteristic features of the social stock exchanges, right from what you call listing to seeking of funds in a diagrammatic format. So these diagrams have been again derived from the core document itself. So I have taken the gist of the whole document, that 72-page document. So the minimum reporting standard for the immediate term, invariably, pictures play a big role. It catches our imagination very well, and probably it gives a nice flow chart also to do things systematically. Okay. So in this minimum reporting would be what, who, how, nice parameters defined, strategic intent and goal setting. That is as per Section 1, the social problem to be addressed, the target segment to be served, the approach to solving the problem. Very simply said. This diagram is very interesting, in fact. Then Section 2 would be social impact scorecard, and that would be reach, depth and inclusion, extent of target segment served, intensity of impact on median individual. Then inclusion would be along dimensions of income, social equity and diversity. So this is a very nice what you call pictorial representation of whatever we discussed here. Then Section 3 would be general information. See, general information pertaining to governance, funding, legal statutory. So governance is members of the governing body. So we have different formats of legal entities. Very simple, 4 of them: NGOs, trusts, societies, and Section 8. And of course, plenty other what you call social bearing organizations can be created, but these three parameters are absolutely required. That is governance, funding, and legal statutory. So funding, demonstration of prior funding history. So past tense is required of any legal entity. So now question comes, what about the fresh people? Right, let us deliberate on this. Freshness itself, today I incorporated, tomorrow can I get into social stock exchange? Okay, we'll deliberate and see whether that possibility is there. Then financials, registrations, licenses. So these three criteria, not merely general, this is the crux of the whole what you call listing agreements rather. So any legal entity should have all these parameters fund. Now, what about funding structures? And we say that the funding which we have already discussed, I put it again in the pictorial format. Intermediary, that would be mutual funds. Then funding condition, if any. Okay. Then funding type. So intermediary would be like mutual funds, and intermediary, another format is social venture fund, and another and any other type of funds available. So the funding condition in mutual fund would be directly funding type. This diagram tells you it is retail investors, grants, or retail investors. So mutual funds directly ends up in the funding type. Whereas in social venture funds, the funding condition would be pay for success, and that would be pay for success, risk investors, grants. Then the other format, the sub format of social venture fund would be grants. Then the other formats of funding would be with a condition known as funding condition. That funding condition would be pay for success, that is lending partners, grants, and grants. So friends, what I would see, this funding structures, one needs depth study, a lot of deliberation. This becomes the what you call source of seeking your funds, and your problem has to be fitting into one of these categories. Then only the subsequent instrument would be justified. So a lot of technical analysis is required for the period that is for today's discussion. It will be too limited to discuss much in detail. We'll have a later deliberation on this. Then next comes a flow chart on donations through charity fund, another format. So charity fund is there, and invariably charity fund is known as donation itself. So here the flow chart is investors. Then the second level would be to market instruments, and would come to the intermediary, that is the returns. Okay. Then fourth would be grants, implementing agency, then beneficiaries. So this is the flow diagram. Very perfect, in fact, very simple flow diagram. Probably it gives a nice pathway. It is something like the drawings are set in, only we have to decide what type of house you would like to construct. Now these diagrams play a very big role. Okay, donations through a charity fund. Then the next would be financing through social impact bonds. So the impact would be capital investment. Then the second stage is implementing agency. The third stage in this beneficiaries. The fourth is achieve outcomes, that is third party evaluation. Okay. Then fifth would be measurement and validation of validation, that is known as outcome. Then sixth would be pay for success programs. Then seventh would be repayment of principal and returns. So nice, this flow chart is in fact very interesting, taking into consideration this aspect, financing through social impact bonds, what you call SIBs. Okay. Then the third figure goes for pay for success through lending partners. So just to fall back on whatever I have done on the diagrammatic front explanation, see, this will tell you how you can design your need. Your project can be fitted into one of these categories. Okay. But of course, one we should never forget, the 3-year limitation period is a must now as per the law itself. So now the third figure deals with pay for success through lending partners. So here, what would that be? Yeah, capital investment. Then implementing agency, again I repeat, beneficiaries. Fourth, achieve outcomes. Then what do you call, fifth one is measuring and validation. Then sixth is pay for success program. Seventh is payment of principal return. So that is a repetition of what I had already mentioned. Then we come to one pay for success through grants. There is a thin line difference between grant and a donation. Okay. In both ways you don't have to repay, but we should know the purpose is resolved. So pay for success through grants. The first would be CSR capital is put into a 3-year escrow account. Fine. Principle slightly shifted. Then the second flow chart would be interim funding partner provides upfront capital to the not-for-profit. So interim funding partner, domestic philanthropic foundation. Okay. Then the third stage would be evaluation. Independent organizations evaluates the impact created by not-for-profit entity. Fine. Another scope for a different set of professionals. Then fourth stage would be CSR to pay one, the program costs to the interim funding partner. Second, accelerator grant to the not for profit only if outcomes are exceeded as verified by third party value evaluation. Okay. Then ultimately we have the beneficiaries list. So friends, when we look into this diagram, it is simple. When you take loan from the bank, the loan is not dispatched in a full volume. At every stage, the loan is dispatched. Now, for example, very obvious example would be you want to construct a house. All the 10 lakhs is never given by the bank suddenly. It is given on stages. We use the same principle, but here there are different professional entities which come into picture here. Say one entity is known as independent organization which specialize in evaluation. It is something like third party evaluation that happens. So pay for success through grants is generally, for what you call period of projects which are of 3 years, and probably has to renew the whole thing and goes further. Okay, so that is this. So that is my view on social stock exchange. I can deliberate much more on this, but due to the time constraints, it will be difficult. I have one more what you call revision presentation just to revive whatever we have done. Okay, so that lot many things are there. It is an never-ending topic for me, a very interesting, huge opportunity. Again, I summarize the whole thing. Social stock exchange, the concept, procedure in a nutshell: providing common premises for socially motivated fund providers, avenues for fundraising, simple and easily regulatory procedures, establishment of new procedural structures, allow CSR funds to cater to capacity building, allow foreign funds to flow to social venture funds, then issue or offer of donation certificates or instruments called zero coupon, zero principal bonds. The non-profit organizations will offer or issue while interested funders will purchase the same. So one such as mutual funds, example Hdfc cancer fund, social venture funds, then pay for success. Okay. Then the second sheet would be social stock exchange, the concept, procedure in a nutshell. The SSE is established within the existing exchanges, NSE and BSE. Then under SEBI, Securities Exchange Board of India, the regulatory authority, which will regulate operationalize donation certificates or instruments, will organize social sector ecosystem. Okay. Then tax incentives expected and which will definitely will be implemented. Retention of ATG under tax structure, allowance of 100% exemptions, the removal of 10% limitations on income eligible for tax deductions, then allow CSR expenditure towards social stock exchange to tax deductible. Okay, so scope. This is something, again, I'm allowed. This is my third presentation summarizing, and I'm putting it even in a smaller nutshell. Okay, in my opinion, the establishment of SSC will definitely enhance, streamline, attract seriously motivated social stock, social funding individuals and organizations. The social stock exchange is an option, not mandatory for non-profit organization, but I would tell you in due course of time, this becomes a measuring bar. Invariably, if anybody wants to donate more than few thousands, they will first ask the social sector entity, legal entity, are you what you call listed with the social stock exchange? This is something which may become a measuring bar. This becomes top. This will be rated as 1. Then only people will come forward to donate amount. Then any NPO wishing to raise funds and willing to commit to common minimum reporting standard can definitely think of participating into social stock exchange. Rather, many of us have that inclination towards committing towards social sector. That much seriousness, even 30% of your professional time, even less than that, can really be an encouraging factor to get into social stock exchange by creating any one of the legal entities. Maybe a couple of like-minded people can go in for it. So it's an attractive proposition, in fact. Then any fund provider wishing to create NPO organization, having a social impact driven mentality. Okay, tremendous scope for social enterprising entrepreneurs to showcase their projects and seek funds. Rural development, within which there is tremendous need for welfare activities for the rural population. So SSC is the best platform. That is what I said, you producer company, then farmer producer organizations, which is at a bigger umbrella for the n number of producer companies. The social stock exchange is the best premises, in fact. Okay, so the scope, again, to elaborate, the most important thing is prospectus. The very document of prospectus itself is a scope for all professionals. I have just made a rudimentary what you call running statements, and a prospectus consisting of institution and details. My God, you have plenty of things to be mentioned in the prospectus, which is a super specialized activity. Invariably, the first role of the professionalism itself comes in setting right the legal entities such that they become eligible to be part of the social stock exchange. So that's it, friends. I just want to finish it fast so that we will have some more deliberations rather than saying a clarification of doubts. What you call experiences count into this. So that's it, friends. I would hand over to Mr. Pradeep, sir. Let us deliberate, sir, for a few minutes, so that lot many things can be discussed and added in. The more I read on every day, when I read about social stock exchange, it is very thrilling. In fact, I always see institutions which having large experience. I would say corporate sector based social legal entities. My God, they have a different level of instruments that can be created, and the tenure 3 years is very short. And one good example is orphanage, old age homes. 3 years is very short. It is a perpetual. Then again, the need for defining and creating, designing the financial instrument is again different. Then we have short-term project. I would always say, the social sector is something like this. You want climate change or weather change. So climate change is very large. Weather change is short-term. So a few months, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, again law comes in. Then you have to repeat the activity. So social stock exchange, I think it will fix up a barometer. Though it is, in lot many platforms it is told, maybe the smaller social sector entities may lose the grip. No, sir. I would say all professionals should cooperate and bring up the smaller sector. The reason is very simple. Our country is too large. Let alone to the government, it is impossible to saturate many of the social impairments. This has to be done in various ways. A very strong implementation of social stock exchange, and rather the whole population has a social bearing activities. We all have a concern. So probably it gives a beautiful platform. And more deliberations, maybe we go back to the schools to explain this, probably catch them young. They are already donors, they share food with friends. That itself is the motive there. Put into larger, there are so many what you call upsets in the social sector. So that can be set right by this. Probably social stock exchange is a beautiful pillar. So that's it, sir. I really get excited whenever I speak about social stock exchange.
Thanks.
It is like a big poem.
I request you to close your screen first.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'm closing, sir. Yes, sir.
So thanks, Ramarao, for this detailed version of social stock exchange. What I am actually need to cover regarding the social stock exchanges. The very first thing is, it is the very premier position where everybody is talking about the capacity building. 100 crore fund will be there for capacity building towards social sectors. That is how we can actually convert this 100 crores of corpus fund towards the capacity building for problem statements and problem solutions. That is the one best way out, using the social stock exchange. And one more thing, all the organizations, those who are coming under the umbrella of social stock exchange, uh, they can actually fetch some of the fund through these initiatives. That is, if individual or organizations are putting their fund towards the mutual fund, and whatever the interest is coming up, if you have a good deliberation towards your document, that is your prospectus, and if you deliver those things, that okay, this can going to be an impactful project. So I'm sure, and I'm really focusing towards that. That organizations will be coming towards us, towards the social development organizations. That okay, we are putting this particular fund towards you, that mutual fund organizations, and whatever the interest will be there, this will be catering towards those social development of or the social problem statements. That is one good thing. And of course, because of this social exchange only, somehow these profit-making bodies are coming up for the grant, and because of this social venture fund, we might be getting some of the grants. Again and again, I am saying the grants because grants are which everybody and every organization is looking for, because there we have to deliver with our due diligence on the activities, but there we need not to deliver on the paying out again or paying back to the organizations, those who are giving us the grant. So of course, social stock exchange is good way to go up as far as my view. And of course, the primarily organizations, those who are actually focusing in this social stock exchanges are two. The third party, that is evaluators, and the more towards his intermediate party. And somehow I can relate this intermediate and third party, that is evaluators. They are a mixture of professionals only. And why? Because they are in the picture of the social stock exchange. Because every government and every, of course, institution is looking towards the accountability first, and then the impact assessment. So, and both the parties, evaluators and intermediaries, they are working for this. Of course, evaluators are more focusing towards the impact assessment of those or impact outcome of those projects. But intermediaries, they are looking towards how the prospectus of that particular organizations and what is the vision mission statement of that particular organizations. So that is how they are actually blending the accountability towards impact of the organizations. Good exercise. Government is trying up to actually come up and better ways to actually get the fund towards the social stock exchange. It is yet to be finalized, but of course, a draft has been circulated towards all, and I'm sure that this will actually really shape on the funding structure for all the social stock exchanges. And those organizations, those who are present here, and others, those who will be listening, I must say that they should go and give a deliberation, at least a pre deliberation towards this social stock exchange, how this is going to shape the structure in the social development sectors. And this floor is open for questions and queries. If someone is having, please ask or add. We can end the session by that.
Sir, I would
Any?
like to add one. I would like to add one point. Here, because of the very notion of establishment of social stock exchange, all our problems will become more defined. They become more defined, and most important is duplication. So for that, the information repositories database that is being created because of the stock exchange, that will really what to call prevent redundancy of the fund. Unnecessarily same बना हुआ रोड में दोबारा बनाते जाते हैं, 10 साल में वही रोड बनता है, खड्डा तो वही रहेगा. So sometimes I would say I would like to go reverse. All rural development should be with the social stock exchange. Nothing has happened, because in the economics we always talk about wonderful farming and hence industrial development. हकीकत में फार्मिंग कभी वंडरफुल था ही नहीं. If not, why will farmers commit suicide? I haven't seen industrialists committing suicide. It is a very serious deliberation. So I would say the social stock exchange would be better put forth. We will do reverse tendency. Start tackling all the rural. Probably what you call minimizing the migration of the rural population towards urban areas, provided opportunities can be created by one social enterprising projects, wherein the impetus initially for 2-3 years would be later it will carry on for itself and it will pay for itself, then it will be sustaining project, then we can divert to another project. So a social stock exchange would provide a beautiful platform for setting up of the correct databases.
See,
Yeah,
I can add up here, Ramarao ji. Manrega can go for a 15 years or 20 years or 30 years of the program, but not the social development initiatives. Why cannot be? Always we are, whatever the government is saying that, okay, this is the scheme or the program of the government, that keeps on going. But what about those organizations, initiative and the programs or the projects? Because see, whenever we try to get the impact of any of the project, at least it has to go through three years of cycle or 5 years of cycle. Then only the real impact of that particular project and that particular initiative is there. So that is always there actually. So projects, if you really try to go for how exactly this particular project is sustainable, we have to see up to the 3rd year or 5th year of deliberation of that project. Then only we get the real impact of that.
Sir, we should have what you call further sessions on the social stock exchange. All of us, the group.
That I will.
Later on, define the skill. जैसे कि ना हर चीज, क्योंकि ये बहुत बड़ा भांडा है सर, फूटने वाला है, कैसा फूटेगा समझ में नहीं आएगा, लेकिन पैर लफड़े में फूटेगा. Because when I handle a lot of issues, ना सर, इतना problem हो जाता है ना. Good things should never start bad. Because I foresee a different, very nice way to get this unorganized sector organized and create huge opportunities for everybody. जैसे कि हर स्कूल के बच्चा, हर कॉलेज के बच्चा जो दोपहर में टाइम रहता है उसको, तो उसको सोशल सेक्टर में डाल देते हैं ताकि उसको भावना बैठता है ना, प्रगति, क्या बोलते हैं ना, गांव का प्रगति जैसे कहते हैं, that becomes very interesting in fact. जैसे कि एनएसएस एनसीसी है, उसी तरह सोशल सेक्टर में पार्टिसिपेट करते हुए बच्चों को भी कुछ मार्क्स होना चाहिए, ताकि that is ultimately the motive. We live in a community. अभी आजकल ना मुझे बच्चों से बात करना, कंपटीशन मुझे अच्छा ही नहीं लगता है. जैसे कंपटीशन बात करते हैं, दूसरे को खाने में पड़ेगा. इट इज लाइक समथिंग लाइक डिस्कवरी, प्रे एंड प्रेडेटर जैसा. वैसा नहीं होना चाहिए, because the whole planet is for everybody. And of late, the serious disasters which all of us are watching, climatic change is horrible. Water level has come up to few feet now. In fact, I was talking to my civil engineering students, why don't you make it emphatically that all houses will be on pillars and they'll be above from ground level by 5-6 feet, ताकि पूरा डिजाइन टेक्नोलॉजी बदल दो. बोला मैं, बड़े इमारतें हैं, नीचे के 2-3 फ्लोर डूब गए अभी. मैं बोला ये अजीब दास्ता, टोपोलॉजी पूरा हट गया ना, अभी पूरा हट गया. So probabilities, disaster mitigation itself is a big problem now. Managing the after effects is very difficult.
If you take the narration of Madras Municipal Corporation, what they are saying is we are focusing to the urban development, but whatever that rivers flowing or whatever the watershed management is been done, it's been done for the new establishments, the newly found houses. What about the old one? Who will do for that? So whenever we think for those things, we need to think for both the things. It's never been that new houses shall be like this and old houses shall be like this. But the new houses and the old houses are on the same street. Then where is the resolution?
Yes, sir.
This needs to think for always. सोचना पड़ेगा थोड़ा कि हम क्या कर रहे हैं और कैसे कर रहे हैं. इसका इफेक्ट क्या होने वाला है. This needs to be catered again and again. So thank you, Ramarao ji.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, sir. Nice opportunity to talk to all of you.
And I do agree. Of course, I was reading chat box through Meghna ji also. I too gone through that period of Sainath ji's deliberation on migration. It was very interesting talk even. If someone really get the time to go through that particular talk, which Professor Sainath has actually covered during pandemic. During pandemic, actually he covered that what can be the reverse migrations is having the setback toward the society and how to cater for those things. That is a good deliberation on a good talk, of course, during the pandemic. So thanks to all for joining me.
Thank you very much.
Our initiative. Today we will be actually today we have covered social stock exchange, and tomorrow we will be covering some of the nice initiatives or the proposals. Some of the organizations, somewhere 3 or 4 organizations are pitching their CSR projects to our professionals. Let us see how those proposals are and how what best can be done for those organizations. Thank you.
We can even discuss with them to see that they too become part of the participants in social stock exchange. Right.
Always.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I am winding up the session. Thanks to all. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.